Simone Biles is eating crow and apologizing to right-wing activist Riley Gaines for their recent online clash. It comes after the Olympic gold medalist called out Gaines for targeting a Minnesota trans high school softball player on social media. Biles wrote to Gaines on X, "Bully someone your own size, which would ironically be a male."
Now Biles is calling for inclusion and equity in sports. Writing on X, "It didn't help for me to get personal with Riley, which I apologise for. These are sensitive, complicated issues that I truly don't have the answers or solutions to. But I believe it starts with empathy and respect."
Gaines responded to the apology, writing, "I accept Simone's apology for the personal attacks, including the ones where she body-shamed me. I know she knows what this feels like. She's still the greatest female gymnast of all time." Meanwhile, social media is ripping her apology, labeling it as a PR statement. Outkick founder Clay Travis writes, "After getting smoked for multiple days, Simone Biles posts a jumbled mess of a PR statement. Embarrassing. She has destroyed her brand with 2 tweets." Journalist Megan Kelly says, "Simone Biles' bending the knee is such a win for sanity. She misread the room."
Others came to Biles' defence. Journalist Jeremy Fassler says, "Simone Biles' beautifully worded apology doesn't change the fact that she should never have had to apologise here in the first place." This is quite a contentious topic, obviously. Tell me your views first. And
I think she was right to apologize. Look, she's allowed to have her opinions on the trans athlete debate. What she said about Riley Gaines' body was really nasty and disgusting. By the way, Riley Gaines is like 5'5". I've stood next to her before. She's a small lady, so I don't even know. I mean, Simone Biles is 4'9", so maybe to her, Riley Gaines looks like a giant. But I wasn't really even sure what she was getting at by accusing her of looking like a man. But yeah, these two should hash it out over the policy differences on whether or not men should be able to compete in women's sports and leave all of the other stuff aside. And Simone didn't do that. She immediately took it personal, which I thought was unfortunate. Now, she claims that she was only going after Riley Gaines because she was calling attention to this Minnesota high school softball player who ended up winning a state championship, pitching multiple shutouts in the process. And I don't read Riley's tweets as bullying that person, but simply calling attention to a very high-profile case of women's opportunities being squandered because of male participation in their sports competition.
So I think, get what Simone Biles was talking about in the first place, which is this issue of bullying. Now, first of all, I should perhaps say at the outset, even though I sit on this seat in Rising, I have said a number of times from this seat that I don't think trans athletes should be permitted to compete in girls' and women's sports. I think that there is an obvious unfairness there. People who are born male, certainly once they pass through puberty, have an inbuilt advantage over people who were born female. So let's be clear about that. I think the issue that Simone Biles was raising, though, is that this young pitcher for the softball team, Marissa Rothenberger, is 17. And Marissa did not break the rules of the Minnesota High School Softball League, right? They don't have a policy, or if they do have a policy, it allows trans women and girls to compete in those sports. The issue, I think, is that Riley Gaines then said on X something to the effect of, "You have a boy as your pitcher," knowing, I think, that would therefore bring a lot of vitriol down on the head of this kid. And the problem doesn't actually lie with the kid. The problem, and Simone Biles was making this point, lies with the lack of clarity from the rulemaking bodies. And often it's the rulemaking bodies that sort of get off the hook, in a sense, when there is a lot of personal invective toward the young athletes themselves.
Yeah, watching Riley Gaines' activism over the years, she has made great care to attack places like the NCAA or the state sports commissions that make these rules. And I think in this case, she was merely trying to show an instance of when the boys' participation is harmful to girls. And unfortunately, there's a lot of left-wing and transgender activists who have denied that this even happens on any particularly large scale, or that it even matters to the women who are facing these issues. And so showing the video, I think, is very valuable for people to see with their own eyes really what's happening, and calling out the truth, which is that this was a boy pitching for the girls' team. It's unfortunate that people would take that as an opportunity to attack a 17-year-old, but I don't think that's what Gaines was doing. I think she was simply trying to illustrate the insanity of what was happening in this Minnesota softball state tournament.
I'll get in a second to the actual point of sports where we have quite a lot of common ground, but to me, all the furor about this Simone Biles versus Riley Gaines thing does speak to what I consider a certain asymmetry in what creates outrage. There was admittedly a lot of outrage about what Simone Biles said, and now she's apologised, and that was, I think, respectful of her to do. In the middle of all this debate 4 days ago, Gaines posted a tweet of Simone Biles testifying against Larry Nassar, the doctor who was convicted of horrendous sexual offences, and posted a screenshot of Biles' tweet. And Gaines's comment was Simone Biles when she had to endure predatory men versus Simone Biles when other girls have to endure predatory men. Now, to me, the comparison implicit in that between Larry Nassar, who was rightly imprisoned for decades, something like 150 girls said he had abused them, to a 17-year-old transgender pitcher. That, I think, is equally worthy of outrage and received almost none. Now, where I do have much more common ground with you, Amber, is sometimes I think among not only people assertively pushing trans rights, but some parts of the media. I mean, frankly, I know you and I play or have played sport, with some level of seriousness at times. And sometimes I think the media coverage is written by people who've never played sport in their lives. Because there was a Washington Post piece just a few days ago. Riley Gaines, of course, first came to prominence because she had competed against Leah Thomas, a transgender swimmer. And there was a piece in the Washington Post saying, they only tied for 5th place at the NCAA. And it's like, do you know what amount of dedication or commitment is required to even get to that level? Anyone who plays sport with any level of seriousness knows the commitment required to get any level of prominence or success in it. And I think that's why politically, Democrats or the most liberal side of this have ended up on the wrong side, because it seems to anyone who's played sport to be fundamentally unfair.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I do think that the tweet comparing the Larry Nassar situation was more about what Riley Gaines and her compatriots went through with some males, not the 17-year-old softball pitcher, who did invade women's spaces for the purpose of engaging in sexual misconduct. One example is there was a incident at Washington and Liberty High School just across the river in Arlington, Virginia, where there was an adult man who was using the young girls' locker room at the swimming pool and apparently had previously been convicted of child sex abuse. And then in the Leah Thomas case, Paula Scanlon, who is now a friend of Riley Gaines and was on the UPenn swim team with Leah Thomas, said that there were numerous occasions where not only were they told that if they wanted a locker room that was free of men, they had to change somewhere else, not Leah Thomas, but that Leah Thomas had often had erections while changing in front of the other girls and almost seemed to take glee in the fact that he was able to use the locker room. So I think she was making a broader point about some men taking advantage of these rules in order to achieve sexual gratification from being able to be in these private spaces.
I mean, certainly if what you just said is true, I mean, obviously I wouldn't at all, that's outrageous and awful behaviour for women to have to encounter. I just have, in Riley Gaines' overall approach, I think was more bullying, honestly. I think that where we do perhaps have some level of agreement is, I think it is important for sporting bodies, whether it's the high school level or at a more advanced level, to be more clear in their policies and these things, and then we wouldn't get into a lot of these situations which have one side understandably complaining about unfairness and another side worrying that all sorts of vitriol has been called down upon.
Well, I hope that Simone Biles and Riley Gaines join forces and protect women's sports together. And Am I too idealistic?
To be fair, Riley Gaines did, I have to give her this, pay tribute to Simone Biles, still the greatest female gymnast of all time.
Which is true.
We have a lot more topics to talk about on Rising right after this.